Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon when you consume your media, of course. Welcome to Run It Back, episode number 98. I am your host, Menelik Fernandez. Thank you for joining in. Uh, it's funny, when I started all of this almost 2 years ago, 100 episodes sounded like something that would be ridiculous, and we're almost there now. So this is pretty exciting. The premise of Run It Back, of course, remains the same, where we take teams that have played previously and we run it back, so to speak, where we talk about game planning, we talk about in-game adjustments, we talk about uh, um, grading ourselves and giving each other feedback on how we feel we performed as a coach during the game. Just things that are terribly niche to coaching, of course. Today is no different. We're taking a look at Tusculum versus Lincoln Memorial. This game took place on either February 18th or February 17th, depending on if you're looking at Synergy or on Tusculum's website. I'm sure my guests will give you a little bit more background on that. And then, of course, the guest element remains the same, where I've been very fortunate to have coaches that coached within the game in question joining me for quite some time now, and today is no different. I'm very happy to have the opportunity to introduce a friend. Uh, it's funny to me, Dionte Ferguson. Who's Dionte, man? You just Ferg to me. What's going on? Coach Dionte Ferguson has been at Tusculum since 2020. He was a GA at Moorhead State before, which was his alma mater. He was quite the player when he was there. Played 2 years, was an OVC champ. He also played at South Alabama and was a team captain there, and had a 3-year pro career, 2 in Spain, 1 in the Philippines. Ferg, man, I'm really excited and really happy to be able to take the time and sit down with you. Welcome. Appreciate you being here.
Nah, man, I definitely appreciate, being able to take the time out of our days to, fellowship as we, usually do, and, talk some hoops. Like you said, everybody that really, really knows me as Ferg. So whenever I hop on these Zooms and they see my real name, my government name, most of them, like, you need to change your name, man. Like, we don't, like, just in case. But right.
I'm like, I remember once I was like, that's his first name. I didn't even know that.
Yep. Everybody knows me as Ferg, man. But nah, it's great to be able to, sit here, talk hoops as we usually do. And, especially what, our union and our guys that we really, really fellowship with, on a personal level.
Yeah.
So sure. I look forward to it, man. Definitely.
Yeah. So let's start here. Give me some background on your league, where you are in the season when this game is taking place. Just sort of give me a background for those who don't know anything about Tusculum. Give us the rundown.
Yep. So Tusculum University is located in Tennessee, a 4-year private institution. We compete in the South Atlantic Conference. The SAC is arguably a top 3 Division II league in the country. Our league consists of Lincoln Memorial, who's, a powerhouse D2, Queens, who is transitioning to Division I, Wingate, who, our brother Marcus Kirkland is at who's had a heck of a year. And then on top of that, you also have the reigns of Catawba, who's been traditionally pretty good, Lenore Ryan, and so forth on. So it's a really competitive league. Every night is a bloodbath for the most part. And it's just one of those things where, the league and just the name in itself, we have a lot of Division I, Division II, I tell people all the time, like, at least the top 5 teams in our league could go into a mid-major conference and compete,
right,
on any given night. So yeah, man, but leading into this game, man, it was tricky because we were in COVID protocols. So we were quarantined for, I believe, 10 days, 10 or 12 days.
Okay.
Was, I think, riding a 2-game winning streak going into the game. So, it put us out for 12 days. So, in the preparation for the game, it gave us a little bit more time to really sit down and like key in and watch film and things of that matter because typically we would play Wednesday, Saturdays is the schedule in our league.
Right.
And with this game, I believe it was going to be a Saturday matchup. So we was only going to have maybe 2 days to prepare for it. But I mean, my preparation since it was my scout is I started back watching this game or watching them when we played in the Peach Belt SEC Challenge. So that was all the way at the beginning of the season. So, with them, man, it's just, with Lincoln Memorial, they're a very, very, very highly talented team, very efficient. They can score the heck out the ball. They were top 10 in the nation in scoring and 3-point shooting. So, this is a team that, and they're only going to play depth-wise, they're only going to play about 7 to 8 guys.
So first, let me jump in. Sorry, let me guide this a little bit here. First of all, Kirk just jumped on. He missed his shout out. Shout out Marcus Kirkland, same conference.
Shout out Kirk, man.
You mentioned Queens. I also want to shout out one of my guys who used to play there, Louis Diankulu, who's now in the CEBL up here. Louis is a great guy, good friend, and obviously I get a lot from your league, as you mentioned, a lot of feedback from him. Obviously, I know Kirk as well, and I know how competitive it is through talking to him. But Lewis always gives me the rundown, and you can always tell how good a league or a conference is by how proud of people are that they played in it. And he's very proud all the time that he went to this school of Queens and the experience that he had. That being said, I noticed something you said. I wanted to focus in on it. You guys are playing Lincoln Memorial. They're actually fairly well known up here in Canada too. Just like you said, they're a well-known team. They can score the ball, have had some famous recruits, etc.
Yeah.
You had 12 days off. I think, like you mentioned, you were coming off the 2-game win streak. And you said you started your scout way back early in the season. Give me a little bit of what that would look like for you. Like starting it early, do you guys break down who does which scout, and then you sort of prioritize which ones you're going to spend more time on? Why did you start this so early, and what does that process look like for you?
So we typically, divvy out who's going to have what scouts. And with our other assistant, Justin Sartrand, we decided to just keep the same teams we had the year prior. So, my scouts included Lincoln Memorial, Wingate, just talking about kind of some of the top teams. Catawba were the top 3 teams that were on my scouts.
Right.
Now, for him, was the opposite, Queens, Lenore Ryan, and so forth on. So with us, and it kind of works, and it worked in our favor with Lincoln Memorial playing in the Peach Belt Conference SAC Challenge. It gave me kind of a little bit of a leg up to kind of see them in person and kind of get a feel for how their personnel works, what type of play calls they're running early, things that by the time we meet up with them when conference started, that, I kind of already had seen and I was already kind of familiar with. So being able to sit there and live scout them worked in our favor. Because I believe and it also worked in our favor because they were playing against a team that we was going to play in that challenge the next day. So I was able to watch both teams, but instead of me kind of focusing on, which I did focus on Clayton State, of course, but for me, it was more important to focus on Lincoln Memorial because that was going to be a team that we needed to beat or at least compete with in order to have a chance to make the NCAA tournament. So with that, beginning that in November kind of gave us a leg up when we played them at home in, I believe, December. And then, our rematch after we got out of quarantine in February.
Yeah, you're right. You got them December 4th of that season.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about what your standard process is for creating a scout.
Mm-hmm.
And then talk to me a little bit about the advantage of actually being able to scout them in person and some of the different things that you would be looking at when you're in person versus what you're putting together for your guys, like behind the computer, so to speak.
Yep. So, as I mentioned before, being able to live scout them during the challenge, I also went and live scouted them. I believe it was December 7th or December 8th. They had a rematch, or they had to reschedule a game with one of the lower teams in the conference at home. And it just so happened to work out in my favor because I went to go recruit a kid
Right.
today, see him practice at a local JUCO that's probably about an hour and a half away from Tusculum. And I was only an hour away from Lincoln Memorial, who played at like 7 or 7:30 that in the evening. So I was able to drive over after I saw him and be able to go there, live scout them in person. I mean, I'm in there looking like Scorpion or Sub-Zero from Mortal Kombat. Got my mask on, hoodie on, hat on, like, and it's not to hide, but it's just more so like in case that they do, because some coaching staffs do see people live scouting, especially like LMU, and they have so many play calls that
Right.
they may, especially when they're playing a lower team in the league, they're more likely going to maybe try some new stuff out, things of that nature. But with us, so I was able to live scout them the first time we played them. I mean, first time we saw them in November, live scout them again in February. And then with the scout, so what I like to do is I like to get as much as I can on them. And for us, and for me, it was really big on the tendencies of the players, personnel-wise.
Right.
Because with a team like LMU who doesn't play a lot of guys, I feel like it's more important for our team to know the tendencies of those players, which way they like to drive the ball. Are they going to pump fake, and try to jump into you, things of that nature. What are they going to do personally, when in a one-on-one matchup that we can kind of cut off and get the ball out of their hands, because their top 7 was really, really efficient. So on scout, when I'm setting up the scout, I always go personnel first. I like to get the guys, top 7, give them anywhere from maybe 3 to 5 keys on the guys, strengths, and about 2 weaknesses. And then from that point on, get into the scout. And most of the time, these guys can't really remember too much. Like they get short. There's got a very, very short memory. Yeah. So I try to break it down in, increments for them to kind of consume. So because with our guys, and it actually worked in our favor, because with us being in quarantine, I was able to start sending stuff to those guys 5-6 days prior to us coming out of quarantine to play against LMU. And it also helped because we had already played them, and this was going to be a rematch. So that we felt we let the first game get away. So most of the guys already were, retooling or refining their memory with what some of these guys really did, especially based off of the matchups that they were going to have. So that's
sorry, Ferg, let me jump in. What does one of those look like? Like you mentioned that it obviously has like the personnel and some descriptive traits, et cetera. What's the length of one of those reports? And would there be a video correlation, or would video be more tailored towards things like sets or how they're scoring in particular actions? Which of the directions does it go there for you?
Yeah. So it depends on, and it deciphers from each team in the league, right? So typically, your LMU's, Queens, Wingates, they're gonna get a full-blown scout, paper scout, or nowadays we don't really do the paper scout. It was more digital. We had a software called Just Play that each of our guys had on their phones, and each day we're putting information in there to send out to the guys. So, and specifically for LMU, because they're a team that was top 10 in the league, in the nation, in regards to 3-pointers made per game, as well as they were like top 5 or top 3 in the nation in total 3-pointers made out of all Division II schools in the country. So like I'm sending out videos, about transition defense, how we got to protect the line, how to run them off the line, things of that nature, because digitally, like it's probably about maybe two swipes, maybe 2 pages.
Right.
Just give them the overview, offense, defense layout of what they're going to run offensively, defensively, what they're going to do, and then personnel, right? Top 7 guys, top 7 or 8 guys for them. And then I get into a lot of the I get into a lot of the statistics of where they rank, nationally in the league, and a lot of those numbers kind of correlate with how they play.
Right.
You know what I mean? So for our guys, they, take a lot of that into consideration, video editing. So, do anywhere from about 3 to 5 clips, especially when it's a lower team, a team that doesn't play as many guys, such as LMU. I'll put probably about 5 to 6 personnel clips per person, right? Showing their tendencies, what it is that they like to do. And then in regards to sets, I'll typically watch maybe about 4 or 5 games.
Right.
4 or 5 games. I always put clips from our previous game in there, and then I'll go back and watch whoever it is that they played in the most recent days, and then kind of go from there. So I try to take anywhere from maybe about, because they ran so many sets, I'll go back and maybe get anywhere from 5 to 10 of their most common sets that they're going to run, and then put it in divide it from man versus zone that they'll run, so that I know specifically what it is that they're looking at, where people on their team like to be at in order to, to get, an advantage against us.
Will you show multiple clips of the same set, or will you try to keep it succinct where it's like, this is what their horns looks like, this is what their Iverson looks like, and you might just show 1 or 2 type deal? What's sort of your belief on that?
So I like to keep it separate. I don't like to keep it just running, because, and I like to actually go in detail and title the plays, or at least title the actions, so that when they're looking at it, because sometimes, they may have a text coming through on their phone or something at the time, or whatever it may be, they can at least go back and see, oh, this action here, this is their elbow series. All right. This right here, this is their horn series. For example, Mikael Burry's left-handed shooter, he likes to work out of the right corner and get downhill to his left hand. Little things like that I like to get in detail with for those guys, so that it makes it a lot easier for them to understand, and it makes it a lot easier to, yell it out from the bench.
For sure. Yeah.
To so that they remember, because in the game they got so many things going on in their mind that they may forget that, Lincoln Memorial, for example, a team that has a lot of principles, like to go back door, things of that nature, that if it's an empty side and the guy is dribbling towards you, they like to set you up with a little jab step and then hit you back door for that little bounce pass at the rim. So, little things like that kind of correlate with our guys.
Love it. For those videos, will you give everybody the same stuff, or will certain guys get more type deal? Like you mentioned, you're scouting their top 7. Does your top 7 get a little bit more intricate with the descriptions from you, or is it same for everybody type deal?
It's usually the same for everybody, because for us, so it's weird, because Coach JT, he's typically been a zone guy. Anybody that's watched Donnie Tyndall, we run the same matchup zone that he runs at Tusculum. But over the last years, we've had to adjust how we play defense. So this year we actually played a little bit more man than we have zone in years past. So with that, it'll be times where we switch 1 through 5. So we like for everybody to know everybody's tendencies, because you never know if a Will Vetter is going to get switched with the Chase Rankin, or if, an Anadi Legis is going to get switched with an Alex Darling, or so forth on. So it refreshes everybody to know, typically, like, can you play a guy at 2 gaps? Like, do you got to run him off the line and get your help side defense to recover? And then are we rotating from that point on? So it just works in our favor from that standpoint.
Talk to me a little bit about rotations and depth charts and matchups and all that kind of stuff. How are you guys doing what you do? And what I really mean by that is, like, you do say that everybody is expected to know everyone type deal.
Right.
How early are guys figuring out who they're guarding, and how much time are they spending on that particular person? And like, do your guys know when they're coming in and out of the game, or is it kind of done by feel overall?
Yep. So the way we do our matchups is that, for example, we had the player of the year the previous year on our team, Trent Gibson. He's had the Indiana State. He, for example, was a guy that we would try to mask on defense at times because, he's a bigger guard, but he was very heavy footed. So, we didn't do traditionally like what you made, what people think, point guard guards, point guard, shooting guard guards, shooting guard, right? Our best defender was Justin Mitchell at the guard positions, and he was our 3-man. So we would have him match up with, he was always on the team's best player. So for this matchup, we put him on Mikal Burris at the time because Mikal Burris was like thoroughly in score on the team, but his numbers were so efficient. Like he was shooting close to 50 over 45 and like close to like 80% from the free throw line. So, and he was a guy that could get hot really, really quick. So Trent, for example, we would actually put him sometimes on our 4-man, right, to mask him because, for example, their 4-man was Jordan Waters, a guy that played around the rim, right, energy guy, high motor. And our 4-man, Jacob Hobbs, was 6'7" long, a little bit more active, used his hands a lot, scouting those gaps, create a lot of deflections. So it worked better for us to put him on somebody like Alex Darlin or Chase Rankin rather than put Trent, because with Trent being our best player, especially on the offensive end, we had to mags him and let him guard somebody that was a little bit, maybe he was a little bit smaller than, but that he could at least physically body with in regards of being able to like keep him out of foul trouble. So with Trent, that's how we kind of did things. Most of the time, those guys, they understand who they're going to guard anywhere from maybe 3 to 4 days prior. And then another guy, for example, another issue that we had a freshman guard, KJ Crump, a very, very small point guard. And a lot of the times he knew that he would be getting subbed out probably within the first 2 or 3 minutes of the game because teams typically wanted to, put themselves in position to attack him in that one-on-one situation because of how his size. So with that, we only switched 1 through 4 with him on the court. Once he came out the game, everybody else switched 1 through 5. So we typically would practice that in practice, but obviously with the COVID, coming out of COVID, we didn't really have a lot of time on court to prepare for the game. We had to do a lot of walkthrough, a lot of video simulations and stuff like that in order to get prepared for the rematch. And it was also easier for us to know who was going to be on who once we went back and watched the first game, kind of made some corrections from that game, and was able to kind of tie that into our second matchup with Lincoln Memorial.
So I got 2 questions from there. Sorry for while you're talking, they're just kind of popping up as you go along. So you did get some court time to walk through stuff for this.
Yep.
But what does that sort of look like for you guys? Obviously, with the COVID protocols, what would a normal walkthrough look like, and what does the adjusted one look like for you guys here?
So typically we will, if we weren't COVID protocols, we would have had a practice where we focused on us maybe the first hour, right? After 5-on-4 get back, 3-on-3 rebounding, and so forth on.
Right.
And then we go into our segments, where I would take the scout team, right? Go through LMU sets, right? Some of the top sets, have them run them to the best of their ability. Like it gets to the point where you got to run into a T where you're stopping in mid-play if somebody goes too early, right? Or if somebody like isn't going to rebound or whatever the case may be. So I'll typically run anywhere from about 4 to 6 of their actions to get the main 5, right? Kind of used to what it is that they're going to see. And then typically we'll switch guys out. It's typically how we would do it. And then at the end of practice, we basically would set aside maybe about 30 minutes where we're actually walking through their actions, how we're going to guard them out of bounds, things of that nature. That way, when we get in the game, you start seeing guys walking to their spots. We're calling out what it is that they're going to run, so that so guys actually know that what it is and how it is that they remember we were going to guard it.
And then going back to the other thing you said, when you guys are subbing, is it always your head coach that is in charge of the subbing, or would it be the person who scouted who's in charge of the scouting for that, or in charge of the subbing for that game? And then additionally, when you guys are subbing, are you subbing based upon which players need minutes for your strengths, or are you subbing more so reactionary to try and make matchups work on the floor?
So our head coach handles all the subs. Realistically, we will give him, insight like, hey, such and such tired, or hey, that matchup doesn't look good. Let's get such and such back in the game.
Right.
Let's try this. Or especially if we see that something's not working, whether a guy's not winning his ones, that's what we called it. We'll look down the bench, especially if it's somebody that's maybe had a good practice over the past few days, right? All right, let's give them a shot. You know what I mean? Because we don't want to go away from the main 7-8 guys that have gotten us to that point. So in that scenario, especially with a team like LMU, we kind of try to keep the depth chart slim to who's playing, especially if foul trouble is not in play. And then we just kind of rotate the matchups based off of who's tired, who needs a blow, maybe who is in foul trouble at the time, and things of that nature.
Gotcha. And then let's talk a little bit about like game philosophies on certain things in general. Like, what do you guys look to in terms of pace of play? What do you look to in terms of how many to the glass, and how does that affect your defensive transition? What are sort of your goals in terms of how fast or how slow you want to shoot within a shot clock? Talk to me about those principles for your team in general, and then specifically if you altered anything for this matchup.
Yep. So we've traditionally been one of the better offensive rebound teams in the country. The year prior to COVID, we were number one in the league. Number one in the nation offensive rebounding per game. We were averaging close to 19 offensive rebounds or something like that per game. So with us, it was very, very important that we rebound the ball, especially with our size at the time. Mm-hmm. And also we were a team that traditionally played a little bit slower. Over the past 2 years since I've been there, our paces went up. So we've tried to emphasize the 3-ball a lot over the past year, because we typically hadn't had a lot of guys that can shoot the 3 at a consistent rate.
Right.
But obviously with pre-training, early season training and things of that nature, our guys got a lot better. So with us, we try to push the pace. We say we don't have anything within the first 4 to 6 seconds of transition that we typically pull it out and get into what we call our Chicago series.
Right.
Is our zoom action basically that we're running, 5-out zoom. So with that, a lot of the time we got some good stuff out of it, but it got to the point where our guys, like with that type of stuff, you almost have to practice it almost every single day and walk through it every single day, because there's a lot of read and react action out of it that sometimes our guys were too naive to see, right? So, we slowed it down and started making little actions, started making them calls, whether it was hook, whether it was, Chicago high, whatever it may have been. I
definitely have some of that stuff for the video, so we'll get to that.
Yep, for sure. But action that typically, for us, that we try to slow it down, try to make it as simple as possible, because with us, we had a very young team also that a lot of people didn't realize. Even though we had our top 5 come back, we replaced a lot of experience from this past year. So we had to really, really tone down how we ran things offensively from the previous year, which we typically ran a continuous ball screen motion. with two just traditional bigs, but with us getting a couple guys and Jacob Hobbs, Will Vetter, who can kind of stretch the floor and shoot it, we wanted to keep those guys out of the paint, especially with bigs that were in our league that traditionally had a hard time guarding bigs that could shoot the ball.
Right. And then let's go sort of from general to specific about your scout. Let's go. What were the things that you really keyed in on that you were like, this is how we're going to beat them? Obviously, you played them once earlier in the year. There's some things that you obviously saw in there, but, talk to me about, I don't know, things like a matchup that you wanted to attack or what you thought was your strength to be able to beat them, like we out rebound them, like you were saying, or, what types of shots or actions did you really want to go to type deal?
Yep. So I tried to, when I was working on the scout, I wanted the guys to know where a lot of the points per game for them were coming from. So I would break it down from front court players to back court players, right? So LMU is a team where they play three bigs that in their rotation. And they get anywhere from about 33 to 35 points out of the 96 that they were averaging a game from their front court players. So for me, it was big that I kind of let the guys know, especially at the forward position, that, if we can cut that 33 down to about, 21, then, we've won that battle. Now, from the guards' perspective, they average anywhere close to 55 points through their four guards. So, that was a big emphasis that if we could keep those guys from, combining for 55 something points, that, we would obviously win that matchup as well. But LMU, right, the three things that has stood out to me when I was scouting them was they were first in our league in scoring offense. They were fifth in the nation at the time. They were first in field goal percentage, which they shot 51%. They were seventh in the nation at the time. And then they were first in assists in our league, and they were fourth in the nation at the time. So with that, we was like, all right, this is a team that's very unselfish. They're going to share the ball. They don't turn the ball over much. But if you were able to sit there, kind of put some pressure on them because they don't like pressure, then you're going to make a very, very hard night for them. So,
right.
So with LMU, and especially with the depth chart, if you can get them in foul trouble, then it works in our favor, because a lot of times with all the things that they had first, they were in the top three in regards to the league. My fault if you see me looking down, because I actually was re-looking at my scout.
Yeah, all right.
But defensively, they would give up anywhere from 70 points a game. So for us, we really, really had to key in on cutting down our turnovers, cutting down our mistakes, because, another key factor that I didn't mention was LMU at the time, they were 42-0 at home over the course of 3 years. They hadn't lost a home game in 3 years. Wow. So we knew out the gate that it was going to be a very, very tough matchup, because at home they play like 100 times better than they do on the road. And it was crazy.
I'm sorry, I got to jump in and ask, do you think that there is some sort of special reason why there, like, the home court advantage is definitely something that exists as a general thing overall, but what do you think it is about going to their school, to Lincoln Memorial, where it's like, they're going to get us, or people are afraid, or what is it there?
I think it's just more so people going there with the mentality, or teams may go in there with the mentality that they've already lost the game. And they do shoot the ball exceptionally, like light years better at home than they do on the road. So there's no doubt about that. But obviously you don't try to put anything on in regards to refs or whatever the case may be that, they get, but with our team, we always had to emphasize with them that, we even emphasize at home that play your home games as if you're on the road, right? Don't look for calls, things of that nature, yada, yada, yada. And obviously, especially playing a team like Lincoln Memorial on the road, you have to know that 9 times out of 10 that they're going to give them an advantage some way, somehow. So with us, with them not having lost a home game in 3 years, um, we had to really, really key in on a lot of our mistakes and really try to cut those out, because obviously we try to keep it to where we have 12 or less turnovers a game, try to get anywhere from 8 to 12 kills per game, which is 3 stops in a row.
Right.
And then we try to also, especially with them shooting 39% as a team from the 3-point line, right, which was also tops in our league, that we had to run them off of the line and force them into tough twos rather than giving them easy threes, because we had a saying that an open three is like a wide open layup. So, and especially with a team like this. So those were kind of things that we like to factor in on, that I factored in on when scouting LMU. And obviously with, a few extra days of preparation that I was able to have, we were able to kind of focus in and send those guys clips of those things over the course of the week, that we really, really, really wanted to focus in on. So.
Love it. Let's talk a little bit about in-game. This is your scout, so has a little bit more importance to you or whatever, but what are some things that you're tracking on the side as an assistant or as a staff overall that are of importance? You mentioned kills, so I assume that's probably in there. And then the second half of the question, on the box score, you guys play 2 halves in Division 2, right? 2 halves, 2 20-minute halves. What are you taking a look at the half that would be of importance to you from a box score outside of what you're statting on the bench?
Yeah. So we look at, obviously we do kills, right? One of our assistants, typically the one assistant whose scout is keeping up with kills. Because the person whose scout it is, I'm too busy sitting there trying to yell out what it is that they're looking to do offensively, and what matchups we can take advantage of defensively. But on the box score, we like to look at turnovers that we have, right? Maybe turnovers that we forced them into, offensive rebounds. How many do we have at the time compared to them?
Right.
Second chance points or points and points off turnovers.
So if, let's say, at half or at some point in the game, you notice that one of those metrics that you look at is not where it should be, how do you guys implement change? Is it as simple as just like, hey guys, remember we need to be, looking for our second chance points more, or, is there certain sets that you go to, or like how is change implemented for you guys?
Yeah. So we knew going into this game that with us not having played in 12 days, I believe that fatigue was going to be a big factor, especially because LMU had been on a roll. They was like on a 7 or 6 or 7 game winning streak at the time.
Right.
So, and we knew that they were going to have kind of an advantage over that with us. So, I specifically remember, I believe at halftime of that game, we were down 13 points, and we had maybe like 8 turnovers in the first half, something like that. It was somewhere around there. I tried to look it up. I couldn't find it, but we had like 8 turnovers. We only had maybe like 2 offensive rebounds. And despite them, despite the 8 turnovers, I think they may have only scored maybe 4 or 5 points off of the second chance point. So
I got you, Coach. It was 7 turnovers at the half.
Yeah. So for us, that's way too many, right? So with that, and then we also try to look at halftime how many threes we've taken, because typically we realize that if we took anywhere under 15 or 20 threes per game, that typically we were going to put ourselves in a good position to win the game. Also, how many times have we gotten to the free throw line, right? If there was only maybe 4 attempts, that's not enough for us, especially with a team where a majority of our guys can get downhill and get to the rim. We wanted to get to the free throw line, especially against a team that's only playing 7 or 8 guys, and try to make the refs, call the fouls, or if not, finish through the contact, and get back on defense. So those are some things that we try to emphasize. We'll also, change the narrative in the second half, going into the second half, that we are taking too many threes. Let's see if we can play inside out, because with us, we had a Nadi Legis who was third team all conference big off the bench, right? So, our bigs were traditionally, we had some of the top bigs in the conference. So we tried to play inside out first with those guys, get them going, because Trent Gibson and those guys attracted so much attention on the perimeter that, especially with LMU, like if you were to go at, Jordan Guest, Jordan Walters, guys of that nature, typically they'll let you get to the spots that you wanted to get to.
Right.
So we would, especially in the second half, I specifically remember we started playing through the post to get guys in a rhythm more so, and to try to wear their bigs down, which we did. And then, obviously try to put ourselves in a position to win that game.
Love it. And then my last question, unless anybody has questions before we move to film, but my last question before we move to film is post game. And I want to give him a shout out because he's actually on today. Shout out Enrico Kufor. This is one I stole from him, and I've been asking this question ever since he did run it back with me. Post game, is there anything that you're doing that sort of evaluates not only your scout, but how close your scout was to the performance of your guys, in terms of like, am I giving them the right stuff? Was this an execution problem, or was this a problem with the information that I'm giving them? Just sort of what's your process after the game to keep things fresh in your mind? And I would also tie this into you mentioning earlier that year after year, you guys are keeping the same teams that you're scouting. So, what are you putting in while it's still fresh in your mind to sort of evaluate the process?
Yeah. So post game, I always look at the keys that we had on the scout, and I try to check mark off where it is that we tried to, what we said we wanted to kind of not take away from them, and did we achieve those goals, right? So, right. For example, with LMU, we wanted to hold them to under 33% shooting from the three-point line. Did we do that? We wanted to hold them to under 40% from the field. Did we do that? We wanted to force them to have over 12 or more turnovers. Did we do that? So, and so forth on. And then obviously, we're able to mark those things down, compare them with the first game, and see, is it something that we were able to do? And if there's any changes that we need to make, because the next time that we would have seen them would have been in the conference tournament. So, it's something to kind of harp on, especially with this game. We knew it was going to be a game that was going to be very, very tough, obviously, because we hadn't done anything basketball physically for over a week. So with that, we knew that we was going to kind of be hitting on some of those keys, or some of those little pointers that we wanted to really, really key in on. We weren't sure we was going to really get them with the guys being because we had guys like Anila, just Will Vetter, who those are guys that have to do something every single day, right? Every single day basketball wise, because they get out of shape so quick. Whereas you got guys like Trent Gibson, all right, or Justin Mitchell, or James West, who can just kind of even with the week off, it only take them maybe a day or two to get back in shape. So yeah, post game wise, we tried our best to do those type things. Try to mark them off at the end of the games, and then see how it is we can, carry that over into our next matchup.
Love it. I'm going to move into video unless somebody has some questions that they want to jump in with. Ferg, like I said, when I'm doing this, I will share my screen. I will play each clip 2 to 3 times. I'll sort of fumble through a description as best I can for anybody who's listening. But, really just want to have a film session with you. So anything along the lines of, what do you see? Why are you running it then? How effective do you think it was in terms of execution? Would you run it again? Anything along those lines, let me know. And like I said, if anybody has questions, please feel free to jump in at any point. Let me just get my screen set up here. Talk to me. Is this playback speed okay? Can you see everything all right there?
Yep. Yep.
And it's smooth for you?
Yep. That's pretty smooth.
Awesome. So this was their first possession of the game. Like you said, LMU at home, it's a tough deal. I pulled this mainly because I thought this was a very intriguing, unique alignment in terms of what they were doing. So for anybody who's listening, it's three across the free throw line and one person almost setting like a Spain screen at the top.
Yep.
There's an offensive, a blast from that top player to the offensive left side, and then a blast from the nail player to sort of tight curl the offensive right horn or forward. And it's a really tight curl, which then turns into basically a wedge screen to bring that post down in. You guys do a great job of getting around and fronting it. They throw the lob, you get it in terms of hitting it away, and you're back in the other direction. Talk to me about this set. Do you have it? Is it something that you've managed to work through? How do you feel you played it? Anything that you see that I might not.
Yeah. So
Also, sorry, Ferg, I want to jump in. He's not on right now. I'm very sorry to do this right now, but a huge shout out to our mutual friend, Andre Gray. The announcement just went out. Really, really, really happy for Dre Gray getting the head coaching spot. So huge shout out to him on that.
Yes, sir. All love to the OG on that one.
Yes, sir. And for anybody who doesn't know, that's Elizabeth City State University, and I know that's LB's alma mater, so we're all excited for him. Huge shout out, Dre Gray. But back to the scheduled program. Talk to me about this, please.
Yep. So LMU has a plethora of plays that they like to run to start the game, start the half, things of that nature. So they're not running this action a lot of the time throughout the game, right? But this is an action that they ran against Anderson that I had peeped out that they would actually run to try to get that lob over the top,
right,
to their big guy. But as you can see, if you let it play a little bit, right here, when they're curling over, this middle guy is curling and setting that back screen on Brandon Mitchell, we taught our guys, and especially our bigs, that whenever the ball's on the wing, we want them to try to front it. And as soon as the ball's getting reversed back for that lob, you got to know that they're going to leg whip, right? They're going to try to leg whip you to lock you, because Jordan Guest was one of the best at sealing guys in the league.
Right.
But, I think that we did a pretty good job right here. As you see, Trent, he was one of the smartest players in the league, sitting right there on the top. In worst case, we told Jacob Hobbs, number 22 here, that if he needed to, he could release over, because Jordan Guest wasn't a guy that really shot threes. He only attempted like 10 at the time, or 10 or 12 at the time, if I'm not mistaken, from the three-point line. Right. So he could be here because he's long enough to play in between both, right? And KJ Crump over here in the weak side corner, right? Now he's hugging on to a guy, because it was senior night for them, that doesn't play at all. So he's hugging on to him way too much.
Right.
So with him, we would want him to have a foot in the paint, or at least to be like kind of midline, because that's a guy that's not a threat for us, right? The other four are. But we did a pretty good job right here, though.
Here's my question to you. I think you do a great job of recovering. What about this player here? How would you ideally like to play that? Like, is the greater threat getting back to this lob and then trying to recover over top? Talk to me about what you mentioned you have the play. Talk to me about what your threat assessment was there.
Right. So number 5, Alex Darling, he's one of the best shooters to play at LMU. So we know that right here where Brandon Mitchell is, number 24, they're looking to they knew that we would probably try to switch this as we did, right? So, but with us, we were fine with that, because Hobbs, if he were to dive down with that lob, which he's starting to kind of anticipate and kind of do, it looks like right here, that he would be able to recover. But now Brandon, he makes a play on the ball, right? But LMU typically would have looked to probably throw this back to Alex Darling for that 3 right there, which is where he shot a high clip from. But essentially, there's some things in this that are wrong, right? KJ's not in the right spot defensively. Hobbs he's hugging his man. He could probably be a little bit over, right? And then Brandon, he kind of gambles to help on the play, which, it works in our favor. But in any other time right here, they would have looked to probably throw that back to Alex Darling, right? And that's a wide open 3 right there. So
if they are doing that, where would you like to close from ideally? What would be the way that you're going?
Right. So typically, if you can rewind it back, but typically if Hobbs is going to be the one to help on that, right, KJ wouldn't necessarily stunt if they somehow, some way got it to Jordan Walters, which I don't think that they would have. But in this instance, right, because this isn't a play that we walked through, right, with the team. We didn't have time for this play. But typically we would have had Hobbs drop down. B, number 24, would have been guarding number 12 and number 5. He could kind of decide which one he wanted. Yep, 24. We will want him to hug or at least deny Alex Darling that pass, because worst case, if Hobbs is dropping down to help on that lob, if they just somehow decide to get it back to Jordan Walters, right? If he caught and dropped it off to Jordan Walters, Hobbs is already right there in position to wall up and go straight up with him, right, under the rim. And then KJ just got to box out or at least crack down and try to rebound that ball.
Like it. Thank you, sir. I think that's a very unique. I think something can't be very unique, actually. That is a unique action that you don't typically see with that 3 across alignment. So I thought it was interesting. It's definitely a tricky one to guard. This one is another guarding one. Forgive me, I think I have 3 in a row that are on the defensive side.
That's fine.
I said just guarding multiple actions in my notes, if I remember correctly. Let's take a quick peek there. And where your help was coming from. So they get to basically a spread ball screen or a drag ball screen in transition. They sort of slip out of it. You guys kind of go like a show and over in terms of coverage. They play through the shake. They get nothing out of it. And then they're reversing the ball to the other side of the floor. So get into some get action. So pass and get. They fake it. And then it turns into the Chicago action that you guys use a lot. They're unable to get to the handoff. So they actually reject. And now they're just trying to play. So it turns into pass and pick and roll. And play through the shake again, and then ultimately end up getting that baseline drive, and you guys help off of your big. So 23 seconds, 24 seconds of playing it all right. Talk to me about guarding multiple actions and what you see here and where the breakdown ultimately occurs and how you would kind of coach them in film or whatever after that.
Yep. So going back to this action that they're running, typically, which is our Chicago, we guard that every single day.
Right.
But, we really put an emphasis, or we were trying to put an emphasis on the fact that communication, especially with a team like LMU, that's very, very high IQ team, is going to be an important piece, especially with us coming out of quarantine COVID protocols. So if you go back right to the beginning of the play, especially with KJ in the game, right? We're switching 1 through 4 with everybody except for KJ, right? So KJ's hugging on to the guy for them that typically doesn't, that's not even really in a rotation for them. So as you keep going, right, keep spinning the clip, right? They look, right, they reverse it right here to Hobbs. We knew, and Brandon knew, that they would always try to get that ball to Jordan Guest because he was one of their best passers, right? Especially out of the high post area. So Brandon has to do a better job of denying that pass and pushing him out because he's comfortable right now with his foot on the 3-point line.
Right.
Going into this, this zoom action here, right? You see Justin Mitchell is basically telling Hobbs to switch. right? Ready with his hands. So that's typically how we told them that we want them to communicate, but we want them to actually scream it out, scream it out, scream it out. It looks like, if I'm not mistaken, Darlin was open for a split second on this slit, right? But Hobbs does a really good job of denying Chase Rankin this pass back, right? Because he knew that as Alex Darlin goes back door, right, that Chase Rankin was going to automatically try to come back for that ball. But he does a good job of denying that handoff pass to him, right? And LMU's taught that if you're denying them a pass, they automatically go back door, automatically go. So we do a really good job of denying this, right? And all we can really ask for is if that clock gets under 10 seconds, then it's at that point it's winning your ones.
Right.
In this case, right now you got Jordan Guest B, who's got the wingspan of a madman, right? has to be putting more pressure on Jordan Guest because he's a guy that's not going to really put it on the ground, right? But if he does, he's going to look to back you down, right? KJ's trying to pressure the guy with the ball, right? And really, KJ should be putting a lot more pressure on him. He's a guy that doesn't play many minutes. He needs to be feeling some heat from him, try to get that ball out of his hands or create some type of deflection. That at his height, that's what we was trying to emphasize with him. Right. That at your height, you have to be a madman on the ball, applying that pressure. But as you see, Jordan Guest rolls. B does a good job helping right here to recover, right? B's got his hands in there. Now, with this, Hobbs does a bad job closing out, right? Just opens his hips, and Jordan Guest and B gets caught on Jordan Guest's top side right here, which essentially allows for Chase Rankin to get downhill, right? Hobbs is standing way too straight up, didn't close out with high hands, right? And then now B is able to still, even though he got caught on his top side, is able to get off of Jordan Guest and try to make a play on that ball.
So in an ideal world, would you like to help from there?
Yes. So we teach our guys that well, for sure, for one, front the post, right? Or 3/4 from the top. But they have to be quick enough that if they see that guy gets beat, to work from the bottom side, right? To step there to cut off that drive. B, right? He gets there a little too late because he's sitting there fighting with him, right? And instead, we tell him that if you're going to sit there and fight with him, just get your hand in there to the point to where he did a good job of making him work out to post position out of his comfort zone, but he didn't do a good enough job in regards to getting off of him in time once he saw Chase Rankin beat Hobbs and cutting off that drive baseline.
Gotcha. Next one is another defending clip. We get sort of like a almost looks like a horns alignment. So we enter, you've got him catching a little bit higher here. You get a little bit of a chin action with the back screen coming through. We reverse to the other forward. And then we're into the Chicago action that we're talking about so much of the pin down handoff. And he just ends up shooting a contested, kind of late contested, and makes it a jump shot. So from the offensive left slot, I would call it. So talk to me about the way that you guard this, what you'd like to see. Are you okay with the under on the lock and trail? Talk to me about the ins and outs that I wouldn't see here.
Yeah. So if you take the play off, well, just about to the beginning and kind of just run through it. So this is their elbow series, right? So this is, and they have many things that they run out of this elbow series, right? So traditionally, if like number 24 is on that block, then you know it's going to be an ISO for him to try to get downhill. You got, if they got both fives right here on the one on the block and one setting that pin down for him to curl, as you see, right? And then they get into this little chin action. Then essentially what they're trying to get into, right, is their zoom action as they did. So B again, right? We want more pressure on the ball. He has his hands down, right? We're losing a little bit of our principle. We're losing a little bit of our principles defensively, right? A lot of that's because we haven't played. Now, Mikael Burry's here, number 24. all right, was one of the most, if not the most improved guard in the league, right? So right here, we're getting lazy already. And I think was that 14 minutes into the game or 6 minutes into the game. So we're getting a little bit lazy. Jay Mitch, right? Justin Mitchell, we taught him, especially with both two bigs, that he's the best defender that we have. He should be attached to his hip, especially as Jordan Guest caught that ball off of this action. He should automatically be attaching to his hip, knowing that action is coming. This dribble handoff action is coming for number 24. Too much space in between them, as you see right there from the corner.
Right.
So, which ends up leading to him getting caught, right, on this dribble handoff screen, right, the first screen right here. Anadi, number 21, right? His gap is way too big, right? He's trying to give some space for Jameis to get through, but again, lack of communication allows for this mishap right here for number 24 to come up, fill up for this shot, which still was a contested shot, but the way he made shots in the league, you had to be attached on his hip and make him get downhill because he shot over 45% from three on the season. So
in an ideal world, this would be an over for you guys.
Yes.
Kind of force him in.
Worst case is for sure over on the first. Worst case, Anadi, number 21, guarding the ball, is giving a little space for him to shoot through that gap to try to force him to get downhill or attack instead of getting this opportunity that he got.
Love it. And then this is basically you guys on the reverse side using similar actions. So you're 5 out, you reverse through the trigger guy, the guy at the top. We get into the pin down handoff. So basically like Chicago action or getting into a Zoom series, as you said. He rejects, and then we come back and just sort of sit behind and shoot the open three, which we miss, and we get the offensive rebound put back. Talk to me about the reject. Talk to me about the series overall. Is the reject a call for you? Is it a good player making a good read? And then talk to me about the teaching points on the dribble handoff where you see he buries his own and there's nothing but space for that shot.
Yeah. If you go rewind it back, I think it may be freezing on my side.
I'm sorry about that. That could be my internet. I'm at the beginning right now. Just
okay.
So I'll let it play one time so you can take a look at it again.
Yeah, it's still kind of freezing. But if it's where I think it may be, it may just be trying to catch up. But with our Chicago series, right? So, and if you're talking about the reject, I'm pretty sure you're talking number 10 because it's still frozen. But number 10 on our team rejects that pin out.
Let me try this for you, Ferg. Let me stop sharing, try and share again. See if that works for you a little bit better. Sorry, everybody. Sometimes we have some technical difficulties.
It's all right. It's life of the internet, right?
Yeah, there you go. Any better for you at all or no?
No, it's just saying you started sharing your screen from my end.
Oh, that's not good.
Let me see if I can.
So, I mean, I'll describe it again. Basically, you guys are, you're 5 out. It's about 8 minutes into the quarter. You reverse through the point, and then you go pin down handoff. Number 10 is the person who would be coming off the pin down handoff, just like you said.
Yep.
Somebody put it in the chat. It works for him too. So I think it might be your internet actually right now.
Okay.
10 rejects, and then number 1, who was the pin down screen, comes back and gets. And then your handoff guy, your trigger guy, sort of ducks in on his own.
Yep.
Takes the gentleman out of the play. Number 1 shoots an open 3.
Yep.
You guys offensively rebound and put back.
So it actually came through a little bit more clear now. But so this right here is what we call a Chicago comeback. So comeback is always going to be for the guy that's the primary ball handler, which Jay Mitchell was the primary ball handler. So So with that, Jalen, number 10, he attracted a lot of attention because he was one of our better shooters just in regards of he didn't really have a good year numbers wise. He only shot 33%, but
Right.
he was one of our top 3-point shooters. He was the reason why we beat Carson Newman on the road, things of that nature. So volume shooter type guy. So LMU is automatically knowing that they have to hug and stay tight to him. So with the Chicago series, right, Chicago comeback, and remember I mentioned that we had to kind of simplify it down instead of just letting it be Chicago where they're just reading off of each other. We had to put names to certain actions in order for them to like be able to just process and make it a little bit more simpler. So with the comeback action, is automatically we're teaching the guys, especially the corner guy, to set your guy up, right? Jab him, go back door, right? In this situation, with us playing a little bit smaller, right, at with our lineup, right, Martez Brown is right here guarding Justin Mitchell at the time. So we know he's traditionally a little bit slower, right? So they get a little bit confused on this reject, right, with Jay Mitch, who was more of a gamer, as we like to call him. He's a terrible, as we like to say, practice player. Terrible. Like you see him in practice, you're like, ain't no way he's one of your top guys. Right. But he gets in the game and it's a completely different mindset. But we actually drill that in practice in individuals with our bigs, that when they're dribbling, to dribble towards the defender and not towards your teammate.
Right.
Because when you dribble towards your defender, and that pitch back for our guys was open a lot of times because guys would like to cheat, right, on that initial action right here, as you see, right? So Anadi does a good job as Jay Mitch is going out to pin out, right, to as Jalen rejects this screen. Anadi does a good job of dribbling towards Martez Brown, right, and towards his defender, so that he can kind of pin him in as he does. Because Jordan Guest, for example, on the other team who's out of the game right now, he was one of the best at dribbling towards defenders and using his body almost as a screen at the same time. So that's what we kind of emphasize with our guys, that if you take a dribble in towards your defender and towards the opposite team's defenders, that more times than not, they're not going to be able to recover for that shot. So Jay Mitch right here gets a wide open shot, just misses it. And then offensively, with the offensive rebounding, right? So we would tell our 3, 4, and 5 to go to the glass. In this scenario, Jay Mitch, the one who shoots the ball, is our 3, right? The one who handed off, and Nadi is our 5, and then Josh is our 4, who actually goes to the glass. So Anadi should be trying to swim move it a little bit harder and get to that rim, but Josh realizes that he has a size advantage and that LMU is kind of sleeping on the defensive side, and he's able to get him an easy one.
So I love the description of everything at this particular point where your big is pitching back.
Yeah.
You've I would say, is it fair to say that you guys work on this prolifically in practice in terms of the reads? Like if he's locking and trailing, you're curling and getting to the rim. If he's going under, like how he gets caught here, it's stop and pop. Or if it's a through type action, you guys are going to automatically twist it and rescreen in the opposite direction. Is it fair to say that you guys are doing that frequently in practice?
Yeah, so we do that in our individuals. In practice, we won't do it as much, but in our individuals, we really, really harp on a lot of these reads because as you see, like, and we're doing them, we're breaking them down each. So Justin Mitchell, for example, we always want to try to get that 3, especially if you're able to pin those guys in.
Right.
They're able to somehow shoot through, right, and recover. Then Josh, who's on the opposite side, right, we teach our guys to reverse it to him, and then we're getting into that zoom action on the opposite side automatically. So that's kind of something that we try to drill 3 to 4 times a week to get those.
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the V2 rules in terms of time spent in individuals, etc. You say 3 to 4 times a week. An individual with this big would be like, this is read number 1, and you would play through it and give them 3 to 5 reps. And then this is read number 2, and you would play through it. And then maybe you guys would get into like a small group action and like work on it with both type deal?
Yep. So we would have groups about the size of 4 to 5,
Right.
and put a coach out there. So we'll get out there as an extra body. And we would just implement, Chicago comeback today, Chicago hook,
Right.
Chicago post or whatever it may be that we're looking to actually like get, kind of like re-register in their mind, especially in this situation with us coming out of quarantine. Most of them hadn't touched the ball in 7 days. So like we're trying to, we try to, as much as we can, try to re-register in their mind what it is that they're supposed to be doing. But in this situation, a lot of that, kind of correlates with the game and translates over. So, this is stuff that we've been working on since October or November, that now that in February that we didn't really feel too, we didn't feel nervous necessarily about or have to worry too much about, because those guys it was our motion offense for the most part. So they were pretty comfortable with it.
Love it. Next one is an Iverson wedge action. So you guys come down and you got the over under of the Iverson action. They actually kind of gamble on it a little bit. So the ball's in the offensive left slot now. And then you wedge to post the player's strong side, and the wedge screen pops for their shot. And then you guys end up shooting it because they decide to not contest. Talk to me about options within this set. Are you okay with this shot being shot by this player? Do you maybe modulate it in terms of making somebody else be the screener? Talk to me about what you see here.
Yeah, it froze up on me again. But if it's our Iverson action, I'm believing it's probably our Detroit, is what we called it. So
you got number 3 going from right to left over top.
Okay.
And then you got number 21 being wedged into the post.
Yep.
And then you got number 8, who looks like a dread to me, popping to the point. And on the pop to the point, there's no contest. They actually go both. If he was the 4, the X4 is below the free throw line, and the 5 who went to the post is fronting. So he just ends up shooting that uncontested, basically.
Okay. It's catching up now. Yeah, if you can rewind it back now. Yep, it caught up to me.
There you go.
Okay. Yeah, it's actually okay. It's still slow.
All right, everybody, we'll get you there at some point.
Sure. I bet you I probably got the clips myself on my computer. But yeah, with this action, we knew that it would be a lot of misdirection or a lot of confusion, especially with LMU. Like what we like to do sometimes too is take play calls from other teams in the league. It's funny, because most teams don't realize or think that you're going to actually steal a play call that's pretty successful for them and run it against them. So with the Iverson action, obviously we try to get, it's kind of like a delay action, almost like it's like some bluff, just to try to see how they're going to bite on that action. And then obviously with the little wedge for 21, we knew he was obviously, like as I said, he was he was our best post scorer on our team. So he attracts a lot of attention, as they know with the minutes that he played, that he's going to probably be very, very efficient with the time while he's in the game.
Right.
And Josh, number 0 right here, is to most people on scouting reports probably a non-threat, especially to shoot the ball. So we knew that there would be a little bit of overhelp on Anadi, right, which would essentially open up Josh for this shot at the top of the key. And Josh, who wasn't necessarily considered a shooter, he was able to keep the defense a little bit modest right here and knock that 3 in.
Knock it in. Make it go down. So this is sort of by design for him. You're recognizing the coverage, and this is a shot you're looking for. Yes.
Well, we know it's going to be an option that's open, especially with him not being a person of what's the word I'm looking for, like a key guy to necessarily key in on.
Right.
So we knew that the option especially with them, and we probably figured that on their scouting report, is that they'll live with a shot like this.
Right.
I mean, so for us, but we have faith obviously in our guys and what they can do. And Josh was one of the guys on the team that was one of the hardest, playing guys for us. So he works pretty hard. We knew that he had the capability to make shoot these shots. So, for him to do that, is all right.
Love it. And then the next clip's an easy one. It's one of the few possessions in the game that you guys went to the 2-3. You mentioned when we were talking before that sorry, somebody sent me a funny comment about something totally unrelated. You mentioned that you guys were formerly more of a zone team. I'm sort of wondering in this game what makes you decide to go to zone here. And it's almost like a matchup zone because your wings are really high. They're almost above the free throw line. Talk to me sort of about your principles, how well you execute, and why you only stay in for a few possessions.
Yeah, so we found it very, very effective for us to try to throw teams off by shaking up how we do things defensively. LMU knew that we would probably play them majority of man, but sometimes, especially at this time, I see it's 3 minutes left in the first half. They were kind of having their way with us. I know it was a point where we were down like 15 or 16 points in the first half.
Right.
So, fatigue is kind of playing a factor now. So we're trying to give our guys a little bit of a blow, try to give LMU a different type of look defensively. With our zone, as you said, we call it fist, and we have a fist 1, fist 2, fist 3.
Right.
We teach our guys, especially our wings, X4 and X3, both that are on the wing on the backside, to be high and wide, right, straddling the 3-point line, because our zone is a little bit more different than the traditional 2-3. Our guards, X1 and X2 at the top of the key, right here, are to be a little bit high as well. Right, from the way I'm looking at it right now, we're in fist 3, which is our traditional 2-3, but we're playing a little bit higher, right? So principles are, if the ball goes middle, we go man. If it comes out, we reshape, and we're right back into our fist series. But right here, we're just trying to give these guys a kind of different look, especially since man-wise defensively, we're not sticking to our man principles defensively. And the zone actually was able to kind of stop them for a couple possessions. And then we ended up, going back to man.
And overall, you would say that it accomplished exactly what you wanted it to do.
So as you see, when Alex Dalton looped, Anadi took him, but as he dribbles the ball back out and reverses it, we're right back into our zone principles.
In teaching it, do you find that a lot of guys have difficulty shifting from one to the other?
Yeah, and that was kind of one of the reasons why we played a little bit more man than anything, because with us having new personnel, Jalen Crowder, number 10, and James West, who got hurt the year prior with a wrist injury, he hadn't really been playing much. So these are guys that, that typically, the rotations it sounds simple to me because I played in it as a player and I coached as a coach. But for the guys, the biggest factors in this zone is that you have to be able to communicate. You got to be able to trust your teammates, and you got to use your hands. So like with us, as you see right here, like our guys, we have 1, 2, from what I'm seeing, we got about 3 guys with their hands down, right? Yeah. So for us, it's doing us no good with our hands next to our waist or to our hips, right? You got to be big in this zone. So, but again, when you haven't been playing for 12 days, a lot of them principles go out, just go out the window.
I will say this, to be honest with you, like the exact point that you mentioned, you can really see it like on the loop cut where they go from zone to man, back to zone again, right in here where there's the loop, he comes out, it's man, and then they zone back up. The communication and efficiency in which they go between the two would never have happened with the team that I most recently coached. So I actually think that I mean, there's levels, obviously, for sure, and you're at a higher level than what I was most recently coaching. But I actually think that it's pretty effective in terms of what they were doing and how they were going through it.
For sure. Yeah. And our guys, I mean, for the most part with the zone, it worked in our favor because these are things that we practice too. Like we'll be in practice and say, hey, like we're gonna go fist 3 this possession, and then on the second reversal, we're man, right? Or on the third reversal, right? If the ball goes corner, we looking to trap that corner, go like or whatever it is. Like we just put different type of scenarios in. So when those guys do see it in the game, which again, LMU is one of the better offensive teams in the league, that they're already used to making those rotations. And obviously it just helps a little bit more if they're communicating also. So
I love it. It's always interesting to see who can count the 3 and who can't, though.
yes.
That's the third reversal. I don't know what you're doing right now, but okay. The next one is one of your horn sets. It's a pin down on the offensive right side. And then it's supposed to go into a ball screen, I think, and one of your players gets a little bit lost. You get fouled on the drive as he attacks, ends up throwing it over the backboard on the foul. But talk to me about the action, the way that it should look, and then the ability of number 33 who catches on the wing and attacks on the empty side ball screen. Talk to me about like teaching points that you would give him going to the basket and teaching points that you would give him. Hey, the play has broken down. This is what you should still do.
Right. So as you see right here, you go into the pin down, right? So this was a play we put in probably about a couple of days before. And obviously come out COVID protocols, we hadn't really ran it much in practice. So
is it supposed to be just straight into the empty side, or is it supposed to be a UCLA and then the empty side?
So it's supposed to be a UCLA, right? For Justin Mitchell to curl over, right? And then Anadi is supposed to go into this ball screen, which would be an empty side because Jay Mitch, number 4 and number 3, James West and Will Vetter are going to be setting this like elevator screen action on the opposite side. Right. That's essentially what it's supposed to be. But I mean, it works.
Didn't work out.
It works out. So, Nadi, sometimes he would get a little lost out there at times, but, he was so gifted offensively that, it kind of, covered up whatever it was that he was essentially supposed to do. But TG, he realizes that, the guys overplaying him or playing him a little bit, pressuring him. And TG, because he was a bigger guard, 6'4", 205, 210, he was able to kind of use his body to get downhill and get to the rim.
Like it. When plays break down, what do you tell your guys? What is the instruction to them? Hey man, just go to the rim, or like, what are you telling them?
Yeah, we typically tell our guys if a play breaks down, depending on what the situation may be. Obviously, we want to try to get to the rim, get guys, especially like LMU, in foul trouble.
Right.
Right here with Mikael Burries, who, man, for this game, I believe he didn't miss a shot. Like we want to try to get him out of the game as soon as possible, right? And try to be a little bit, impose our will with a team like LMU that's not as physical, but still very, very talented. And that if you do, again, like I appreciate, if we're able to get these guys into foul trouble early, right? And Nadi does a good job kind of bumping them, right? Because we try to teach our bigs not to sit there and hold that screen long, right? If you can try to just graze them a little bit, right, and give our guys right here, TG does a good job, right, seeing that Jordan Guest is kind of just doing a little short hedge, kind of just showing. And then he just has all this space right here middle to try to get downhill and get to the rim, which he was very, very good at. So
love it. This one was one that I really liked. This is a multiple action set for you guys. The ball's at the point, looks like a box set to start, but becomes an Iverson action. You enter to the offensive left forward, get a little bit of a blind pig over the top action, and then you get a handoff over the top action, both of which your big doesn't give it up on. You get a duck in from the other side, and then on the duck in, still don't get it in. So now we automatically turn it into Chicago on what's the new strong side, and we fake the reject and just kind of sit behind on the handoff and knock the shot down. This to me is awesome action in that I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's not the play call, and that your guys are playing within their principles deep within the set and figuring shit out for themselves type deal.
Sure.
And that to me is a real reflection of how good a coaching staff is in terms of this might be the play call, but this is how you guys do multiple actions afterwards.
Yes.
Talk to me about what you see. Talk to me about how it relates to things you practice. Talk to me about the execution overall.
Yep. So we try to teach our guys that 9 times out of 10, especially when you get to the second half of the season, that the really, really good teams are going to start taking away your first and second opportunities that you want to get, right? So right here, LMU, right, they do a good job as you keep playing the clip, if you don't mind. But, you know, they do a really good job of knowing that after our first initial action breaks down, that we're essentially going to get into our Chicago series, right? But Trent did a really, really good job of knowing that teams automatically knew that more than likely he wanted to try to get downhill and get to his right hand.
Yep.
And LMU did a really, really good job at times of either riding his hip or trying to slide under or go under those screens in our Chicago series. So again, it's kind of like the action earlier, right, with the handoff, but instead of it being the guard, right, in that strong side corner, he ends up drawing 2 guys to him, right, Jay Mitch.
Yep.
Right, as he gets out of this, and he realizes that Mikael Murray's, because we realized that Alex Darling, number 5 and 24, weren't their best defenders, right? But we knew that as Jay Mitch curled this, right, to go get TG, that 9 times out of 10, that if TG would have sold that, making him think he's going back door, and then Jay Mitch just turned his body in to almost kind of like set another screen, that again, now you got 2, basically a double screen happening from Hobbs, because Martez Brown's not going to come all the way out and contest that, right? Jay Mitch, who was one of our stronger defenders anyway, excuse me, who now we told him that if you kind of sell it and make it look like you're going back door and just shift your body to make it look like you're setting another screen, that TG, who was kind of a streaky shooter, should be able to get a wide open opportunity right here, which is what ends up happening for us. And, you know, it gave us a lot of confidence going down the stretch of this game.
Gotcha. You good? I got 5 more. We're right at the 90-minute mark.
No, we're good, man. We're good.
All right, let's do it. This was an interesting one to me. So they start with the ball at the point, and it's just basically going to be a high ball screen. But they start screening. They start by screening their own.
Yep.
They're anticipating the switch. So it sort of takes your ability to switch away. I think he kind of moves into the ball defender as well here and hits the ball defender. But talk to me about how you feel that you guys are playing this. I don't want to call it a unique way to play it, but this screen your own where you sort of forfeit the ability to switch. How do you think that you guys did overall in taking this away? You do end up stealing the ball and going for a layup in the other direction, but is this a coverage that you would see often? And, you know, do you talk to your guys at all about it?
Yeah. So right here, so Jordan Waters, again, like they didn't include him, or he wasn't necessarily the primary guy in certain factors, but they knew, right, from scouting us that our bigs sometimes get heavy footed, and that if they're able to get a leg up on them getting downhill, that more than likely guys like Jordan Waters can get downhill, especially who are very, very athletic, and try to get to the rim.
Right.
But LMU was one of the better screening teams also in the league as well. So as you see right here, Chase Rankin, number 1 for LMU, screening his own man in, understands that if he's able to kind of clip his guy, or get his guy, which is James West, to kind of clip Anati at the same time, that he's kind of able to get them to switch, which is what they wanted, and try to get him to go downhill. But James West does a good job of realizing that Anati's probably not going to be able to make this recovery, because we didn't want him to switch with James West. But James West did a really good job of recovering, was able to get his hand in there. And then Will does a good job as Matthew Sells, who was a very talented freshman forward and one of the best three-point shooters in the nation, of getting, as he sees him driving that ball, just stopping right there to be able to kind of help and just have another body right there to get his hand in there also.
So in an ideal world, and I'm sorry, the clip is so short, it keeps going to the next clip. In an ideal world, you're okay with this help off of the short corner on the strong side, as you guys do. And you're also okay with the not being able to get back in sort of late emergency switching. Both of those are okay with what's happened there.
Yeah, because KJ, for example, isn't in the game. So, KJ Crump, our 5'8" point guard, is in the game at the time. So emergency switching it is all right with us as long as they're communicating. Because of how tight number 5 and number 4 are, we're okay with Will Ver, number 4, kind of helping as number 12, Jordan Waters, is attacking that rim, because as he's getting downhill and he's coming through with his guy at the time, he's able to sit there and kind of stunt at him, right, and still be able to recover back. But it's not that big of a deal for us, because worst case scenario, if he were to somehow dish it out to that corner where 2 shooters are, Jalen's almost guarding 2 guys at one time right now.
Right, because they're so close together.
They're so close together. So with Jalen guarding 2 guys, right, if Will just so happens to have a late recovery, more than likely Jalen's going to take whoever the ball would have gone to and recover to the opposite guy. But in this situation, with them trying to get a quick downhill drive, we're okay with how this worked out.
Love it. This one is just one of your baseline out of bounds. I like it because I also run it. Just thought it's kind of interesting. It's a stagger towards the strong side. So I would call the ball on the offensive left side of the floor. We run a stagger to the strong side corner, which is actually what you guys get a shot out of. The low man in the stagger filters opposite. The high man in the stagger pops up to the top. And the way that I run this, the other gentleman would be in the opposing corner. You guys have him in the opposing slot. No big deal. Talk to me about options. Talk to me about the effectiveness of how you ran this, in your opinion. Talk to me about. I guess your top guy is actually the first in a tertiary set of screens. I didn't even really realize that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
So, just give me the rundown in terms of options and how you think you did efficiency-wise in it.
Yeah, so this play here, we call Cobra. So TG number 33, right, he attracts a lot of attention. Typically, what would happen was he would set that back screen, and James, who ends up being the one kind of breaking that play off, would be the one going to back door and then clearing out to that empty side corner. But we knew that LMU would more than likely bite on Trent, right, coming off of that stagger action. And James hadn't been shooting the ball well at all. We knew that he needed a little bit of confidence getting back in the groove, and that he would probably be able to hit one of these 4s down the stretch. But obviously right here, we do a really good job of, if the guy decides to just come off, which James does, right? We told James in this matter that we want you to try to break off a corner, because more than likely they're going to be looking for Trent.
Right.
So 9 times out of 10, what's going to happen is, as James is sprinting to that corner to get that shot, because he has a very quick release, right, to get it off, that Josh, who was one of our better screeners at the 4 or 5 position, is able to slip out of that, and more likely you'll either have that corner shot, that slip, or worst case, if we don't have anything, Will at the top of the key is going to be there, right, for some empty side action that we're able to get into once Jay Mitch clears out to the opposite side. But we don't make the shot, but it's still a good shot for us.
Right. I love the shot quality for sure. I'll like, for me, I'll give you just because it's a variation that I run. It's that player is up there instead of being the first screen, and then this is still stagger, and then he's still coming off to that corner, and that's one of our shots. But then what I do is I curl this guy into this short corner, and then I actually curl this guy for the dunk in the front of the rim.
Okay.
And if everything doesn't work, you're left with a 1-4, and you just throw it right here, and you're into ball screen on this side. And I actually stole that just because I see the gentleman on the call, but I actually stole that from the Nets. And I saw DeAndre Jordan get a huge dunk out of that roll, and I was like, I am absolutely doing that. That has got to go for sure. But as soon as I saw it, I was like, love this. This is a great set, and I think the shot quality out of it is incredible. This one is just a defending the back cut one, so another one that's a little bit of a slip up. They sort of elbow series it, or almost horns formation, I guess, where they pop out. And then they get into their Chicago type action, and they get nothing out of it. They reverse the ball, turns into a top ball screen. And then it looks like you've played everything properly. And then they just kind of throw like a little lob in behind on the bounce pass for a back cut and dunk drop off there. Talk to me about where you would help from and what your teaching points would be to be able to not have this happen.
Yep. So typically, right, this is some action that we're running throughout practice.
Right.
So, obviously it can be a little frustrating when they get these opportunities, especially when you guard it so well for the first 15 to 20 seconds. But, especially, man,
it's always funny. Like, if you look at the possessions of the game, right? Let's say you actually wrote out every possession. It's not going to be like guarded well for 28 seconds. It just says scored, and you're like, fuck, we did good on that.
Exactly. But yep, right here, man. Like, again, they did a really good job of using their bodies to screen to kind of create that space to get those passes in there. But as you see, again, they get into their zoom action. Josh is doing a heck of a job over here in the corner of face guarding Mikal Burris, because a left-handed shooter, right, or driver, just 3-level score. We knew that he was going to be a focal point, and at any time he was in this corner, that they were going to be looking to try to get him the ball to get downhill, right, or to try to create an opportunity for him to score that ball. But, again, we do a really good job, right, of denying that. Josh does a heck of a job denying that right there for him. And as you see, as the shot clock's going down, man, we do a really good job. Now, rotations wise, Josh did a heck of a job, right? So once Mikal Burris curls this screen, right, denies him out the pass. I was letting the play speed catch up to me, but no, you okay?
We good?
Yeah, it froze up, but I'm pretty sure that dunk's coming out of that weak side corner, right?
No, so there's the overtop action to get nothing, and then it turns into the top pick and roll. So the guy who is actually the elbow guy who in the Chicago action keeps it, reverses it to the point, and then just kind of slips out of the pick and roll. And on the slip, he throws a nice hook pass.
Yeah. So, man, so with this action right here, with Alec Dahl making this pass, so the way we would have wanted these rotations to happen is as Mikal Burris is curling, right, he clears out to that weak side corner, right, and Nadi and is filling up to the top. What we would have wanted was that as B, they're saying that step up screen. We teach in the ball screen actions that, like, so imagine those elbows, like there's a piece of tape going from the elbow basically to half court, and that there's a piece of tape on the other side going. It's like a funnel, right? So We teach that if it's on the outside of that funnel, that we want to blitz or red that ball screen.
Okay.
Okay. And if it's on the inside, we want to zone it or play drop coverage of the funnel. So right here, B is too much space right here with B. Again, with the wingspan that B had, this pass shouldn't even got there. But B had a tendency at times to play a little bit more relaxed on defense at times, which essentially ends up hurting us. But it also hurts us because where Anati's the ball's on the right side of the wing. Anati's still on the left side, kind of hugging Jordan Waters, who isn't really a threat, right? He should have a foot already in the paint. That way, worst case, he can recover, and then Josh, as he's going through, he's not seeing the ball at all. So, and Josh should be, and we told him, even though it's Mikal Burris, that we would want him to have his foot on the block instead of actually going all the way out there with the guy or being midline, which traditionally we would teach.
So basically stop him right in there.
Yep. So basically stop him.
Turn around, see the ball type deal.
Yep. And then Anati should be a little bit more over because he's he's about a pass and a half away. So because Josh isn't seeing the ball, Anati isn't where he's supposed to be, right? And then B, we don't get a really good trap right there. They were able to get that that wide open layup right there for Jordan Guess.
Like it. Two more. This one is interesting because I love Spain pick and roll, but you guys go to a little bit of Spain pick and roll just randomly with like 3 minutes left in the game. So talk to me about how effectively you think you run it, and talk to me about the choice to do it. For anybody who's listening and not watching, offensive left slot, they attack over that. The coverage is dropping under, and then the roller or the first screen ends up actually switching the sides that he rolls on, and typical pop. They gamble at the pop pass, and then he goes back door and takes a layup down the center, ultimately missing it. Talk to me about the effectiveness and why you're deciding to run it, and how come you didn't run more of
it? Oh, man. So we put this Spain action in probably about maybe a month, probably around the first time that we played LMU is when we kind of started getting, because LMU at times will run a little bit of Spain action also. So with this Spain action, we was trying to get a little bit of a, at this point in the game, I can't see what time is on the clock.
I think it's 3:30 left in the second half.
Okay, yeah. So we were on the brink of trying to come back at the time. And at this point, we're trying to make all these possessions kind of count a little bit more now. Now the guys kind of woken up a little bit now. Right. Now fatigue's not really playing a big factor into the game. And is it playing for you?
It is, yeah.
Okay, it's still probably catching up on my end, but
yeah, a new internet package for your birthday.
Man, you know, it may be this Texas internet. maybe it's not meant for me to have Texas internet, man. But but let me see something.
So I'll describe again for you. Basically, you got number 33 as your ball handler. He's attacking left to right slot. He comes off of that top ball screen, and your first screener in the Spain action is number 4. He's your big. Instead of rolling down the offensive left lane line, he actually crosses the floor to the offensive right side. And number 1 is your back screener or your nail screener. And he pops. And when he pops on the reversal pass, they gamble, and he back cuts, ends up getting a left-handed layup at the front.
Yep. Nah, I was actually switching my internet connection. So shout out to AT&T. But But yeah, so this play here we called it was actually, this is the play that we stole from LMU. They called it shoulder. So what we like to do, and a lot of times we got shots out of this, man, but because we don't have a shooter in the game, like somebody that we consider to be a shooter, because we were running this for James West, number 3, number 10, Jalen Crowder. sometimes we would run this for TG, but we knew TG would draw a lot of attention off of this, right? So with Chase Rankin on the scouting report, I mentioned to the guys that a lot of what LMU would do defensively, they would play a little bit lax at times, right? But Chase Rankin was their most active guy. As you see right here, he tries to gamble for the ball, but we knew that more likely he was going to try to run this pass lane or shoot this pass lane, especially. So we tell TG, and TG was really, really good at this, of using the pass fake to try to sell him to bite on it.
Yep.
Because Mikael Burries knows that Josh isn't really a threat to score that ball. And he also kind of played lax at times, that you see him, he steps into this passing lane. Jay Mitch was really, really good at stepping in, or not Jay Mitch, excuse me, as he's going back door. Jay Mitch is going back door, and Mikael Burries helps. The smarter play would have been to probably hit Josh right here on this corner three, right? Get the 2 feet. But this is a good drive for Jay Mitch, though, in hindsight, because he was one of our higher percentage guys getting to the rim, right? He just blows the layup. But for us, you know, we thought we actually talked about maybe we should have ran a little bit more of this, but we also knew that with LMU running this action a lot of times also in games, that it'd be a scenario where we could run it maybe anywhere from 2 to 4 times per game, especially against them, and try to get this advantage. And Will, at the time, we knew that he would draw a lot of attention, as you see on this drop, on this roll, because I think he had about 10 or 12 points in this game. He did a really good job at going at Jordan Guest, who didn't want to get in foul trouble. So
can I hop in? I got a question on this roll.
Yep.
Did you guys purposely send your roller this direction instead of this direction, which is common, so that you could have one-on-one in the center of the floor there and play against that, try and get that back cut?
Yes. So typically and we switched it up at times depending on who was in the game, right? But as he's coming off, right, as Will's rolling, traditionally he would have went the other way. But we knew that Jay Mitch is such a good one-on-one driver, right? Getting downhill, a guy. And with LMU, we knew that they were going to try to stay with their man. So we knew worst case scenario, if he were to reverse his ball right now, that Jay Mitch would have the advantage on Chase Rankin getting to the rim.
Very interesting.
But we also knew that Chase Rankin was a guy that gambled a lot and got his hands on a lot of balls, deflections, things of that nature. So Jay Mitch, we told him, if he's going to overplay, you automatically go back door, right? Which it works in our favor, right, to get to the rim. We just did a bad job of finishing at the rim.
So I love the idea of sending the roller to the new strong side and relocating the ball handler to to really create that strong side, and then creating almost a double gap to attack for a good ball handler and play one-on-one, right? Like you know he's an aggressive defender. If he can overplay you, send it, like that actually works out very well. I like that a lot.
Now, what we also did too, I forgot to mention, was the reason why sometimes we would have Will roll ball side block is because teams wouldn't play as aggressive as they're playing with Jordan Guest. And sometimes we can get that over the top pass to Will right there.
Right.
Because if we had a shooter in that weak side corner, they would be hugging on him a little bit more, which would open up that over the top pass right there.
Love it. Last one I got. I thought that this was just a great find for you guys. I don't know the exact score because it's not posted here, but the game ended up being 6. So I'm assuming it's still pretty close. We're under 2 minutes. They had just scored. You guys don't call a timeout. You come down. And basically you're in a 5-out type Chicago action again. So you make the pass to the trigger guy up top. It doesn't really turn into pin down handoff. It's kind of more like pin away handoff, in my opinion, where the screen happens almost at the wing. And then you guys twirl or tight curl the first one, and the second guy comes back for it. And the guy who twirled or tight curled pops to the corner. We come off. We're looking for a shot. There's 2 to the ball, and they're pinching. And then as they're recovering, a really great pass, corner three, knockdown, give you guys a chance. Talk to me, how much is play call? How much is the right read?
Yeah.
And obviously you guys are working on end of game situations. So how closely does this align with what you work on?
Yeah, so at this point, a minute 40 in the game, we realized down 6 that we're trying to, make as many possessions. We don't have as many possessions left. We're trying to, time management is, very, very essential in this at this point of the game. And we actually practice this type of stuff where we're actually trying to where the main 5 may be down 6 points with 3 minutes to go, or 15 points with 5 minutes to go, whatever it is.
Right.
So a lot of times right here, what we're running is the Chicago hook is what I was calling it, Chicago hook. So instead of it being a wide pin out and curling that, essentially, we always, and this is where is Kirk, I don't know if Kirk is on the call right now, but
he's still here.
Okay, so Kirk knows what this action is, because essentially, if TG would be the one going out to pin out, he was always, this is where Kirk always talks about, where we would end up bringing him back
right
for that pass. Right, so TG does a good job, right, getting downhill off of it, right, or trying to get downhill. But LMU does a really, really good job as Josh curls it, which Josh clears back out to that empty side corner, right? Trent gets that kind of that mismatch, right? He draws 2 defenders right there, and Josh is wide open again. And we trust all our guys to be able to shoot the ball. They have shown that they can shoot the ball. Josh, who stepped into this role for us late in the season, was able to knock this in after drawing 2 right here. Because as you see, Alex Darling and Jordan Walters kind of have a miscommunication defensively of who should be of switching and things of that nature. Alex Darling tries to recover back because they typically don't switch as a team, right, much. But if they do at times, it allows you to get this, because now you have Mikal Burris having to decide who is he going to guard. And they understood that Nadi was the better option at the time, and that they, again, would live with Josh being that guy on the scout for them who would get that shot. Josh just does a really good job of being able to make it.
Would any of the 3 gentlemen involved in that action be allowed to shoot this shot, you think?
Yeah.
So like the guy coming off of the hook action is probably going to be the person who's open first.
Right.
The guy who pops in behind is going to be second, and then you guys actually ultimately find what I think would be the tertiary option, most likely, but he's wide open. Any of those 3 for you guys, you would have been okay with in this scenario?
Yeah, I mean, Trent, TG number 33, he's proven that he can make this shot time and time again right here. If he decides, if you go back, if he decided that he wanted to stop behind the Nadi once he curved, then that would have been a great shot for TG to take, right? But TG does a good job knowing that more than likely he's going to end up drawing 1 or 2 to him.
Right.
And that Mikal Burris right here does a good job of understanding that he probably needs to do 1 or 2 things: take a Nadi away, who's going to look to either do the 1 more to Josh, or that's Anadi is going to look to drive and get downhill at the time. But yeah, any of these 3 could have taken that shot for the most part, but TG did a hell of a job being able to find Josh, who was wide open.
Great find for sure. Unless anybody has any questions, that's all I've got. Ferg, thank you for suffering through it with me, man. I hope it wasn't boring or too pressure ridden or anything like that. I hope there's value in you being able to talk and sit down with me, because there is for me.
For sure.
I want to take a second and thank you. Got to spend some time with you in New Orleans recently, obviously, but our whole group of guys goes out to all of you for sure. I always say, like, thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate. And then there's some gentlemen in this call from another group of guys that I hang out with a lot too. Jimmy and Rico, nice to see you guys on today. But like, I really enjoy this, and I hope everybody who listens in continues to find value. And Ferg, thank you so much for sitting down with me, man. It's a pleasure to learn from you and really get from your experiences. Hell of a player from everything I've heard. So, to be able to sit down, it's awesome. Appreciate you.
Nah, I appreciate the opportunity to come on the platform. And of course, obviously I wish my internet would have been a little bit more stable, but
I think we could. I think it still ends up being okay.
yeah, man, we was able to push through it. But nah, man, this is obviously a great platform. I consider you be a great friend, brother of mine. And just, being able to sit here and fellowship with you, talk some hoops, and kind of just relive a scenario in a game and just kind of, figure out ways to help each other grow the game at the end of the day. Is what it's all about, man. And, I always say it goes beyond basketball. So beyond the hardwood. So yeah, man, glad to sat down, been able to take some time out the day to fellowship, appreciate everybody that came on. And just I'll make sure I change my name to Ferg next time instead of having my on there. So people don't get confused on who I am. So
no, I love it. That being said, I will wind it down there. Everybody, I'll see you guys next week as we close in on episode number 100. We're getting pretty close there. Ferg, hang out for a minute. I'll stop the recording here. Let me know what you think. Thanks, everybody.